Do not be deceived by this woman. Nothing she says is true. Welcome back to the madness. My name is Erin, and today we're sinking into the void of abject madness as we go into our next book, None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. None of This Is True was written by Lisa Jewell. It was narrated by a whole host of actors. There's like 6 or 7 of them in there, but I didn't actually listen to the audiobook of this one. This time I did paperback because a friend recommended that I read it. She wanted to know my opinions on some of the themes, and getting paperback from my library was the fastest way to get it versus just waiting on hold for the audiobook. So I did paperback this time. It's been nominated for a handful of awards. It's currently sitting at 4.13 on Goodreads with about 500,000 ratings. People like this book, and I'm one of them. As someone fully invested in titling fictions, I think for this book I will always champion "Hi, I'm Your Birthday Twin" as what this book should have been titled, because it's such an odd sentence that draws out your curiosity. Like, what the hell is a birthday twin? Give me your backstory. I will, however, I'll lay down my weapons on this crusade over the name of this title, because I can also admit that None of This Is True not only fits the story, but it does do some narrative legwork, and titles that do narrative legwork are honestly some of the best titles out there. At first, it really seems like this title is a part of that enclave of thriller-esque naming conventions. If you read enough thrillers, you understand what I mean. Books like If I Can't Have You, I'm Not Done With You Yet, Listen for the Lie, The Last Thing He Told Me, A Rough Way to Go. They all have this sort of same kind of convention to conjure a sense of unease and suspense. There's clearly a pattern here. And when you have titles working in the convention of the genre itself, to me at least, it's a little bit harder to stand out, because in a way, in following that convention, it starts to feel generic. Sarah J. Maas is not the person who came up with a blank of blank and blank when she wrote a corn. Did I say a corn? A corn? A Court of Thorns and Roses. But since the popularity of that book, that sort of naming convention has gotten way out of control, to the point where, like, I get skeptical reading books that have that naming convention, because I'm just, like, afraid. But I'm pretty sure George R. R. Martin did it first with A Song of Ice and Fire. And the worst book that I've ever read also follows that naming convention. Oh, not the worst book, one of the worst books, but the best title, which is A Forest of Hands and Teeth. And I think I've read one other book that follows that convention. A Botanist's Guide to Party and Poisons, I think it is. This is a sidetrack. Anyways, genres have naming conventions in order for you to be able to tell what genre it is by reading the title. A blank of blank and blank tend to be fantasy novels. You hear the title, None of This Is True, you're like, that's like gotta be a suspense novel. What else could that be? A rom-com? This is not a bad thing for this book. Like having a generic title, a title that works in the market, I don't think that is inherently a bad thing. Because, you need to get money, and using the conventions of the genre naming conventions at that time is going to help you get money, and I want you to get paid for your book. It's not the bad thing. But for me, that means this title has got to do some narrative legwork in order for me to feel okay that it has a generic title. And thankfully, None of This Is True. It does narrative legwork. And that's why I'm fine with it not being, Hi, I'm Your Birthday Twin, because at least this is doing something. The title is a warning that you will forget. Before you open the book or look at the back, it is screaming at you literally that none of this is true. But you don't know what isn't true. You don't know who the liar is. And the liar in question, she is so charismatic that at first, by the time you hit the point where the title is kind of bashing your head into the reality, yelling, "I told you so," you are like shocked and stunned and impressed that the book managed to deceive you, despite the fact the book warned you at the beginning, do not be deceived by this woman. Nothing she says is true. It was really impressive the way that they distract you from the title once you start reading. It was very clever. I liked it. The title is obviously the biggest hint towards the plot. I was texting my friend updates, and because I'm such a title-focused person, as I was reading, I would always go back to, okay, but none of this is true. What does that mean? When I am reading a book, I am always thinking about the title. So I texted her at one point, and I was like, is this woman a family annihilator? Is that what's going on? Did she murder her whole family? And my friend, the next day when I had finished the book, she's like, I was shocked because you had guessed the plot halfway through the book. And it wasn't because it was predictable. It was because Lisa Jewell is confident enough that she isn't bothered by the fact that a reader might figure out the plot twist before she reveals it, and she very much writes that way. She's confident enough that the story is good that even if you figure it out, the turn of the question will still keep you going. My brother spoiled for me the ending of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood before I watched the first episode, and you might be thinking that's an insane thing to do, and it was. But it turned my question into, are they going to make it to how are they going to get there? And how are they going to get there can still be an interesting question if that is something that you like in storytelling. So some people might be, oh, the plot is too predictable, but I'm just like, I don't mind the turn of the question. I don't mind the ifs turning into hows. I like being right, which is why I like guessing the plot. So like, go me. Anyways. Okay, here's the problem with the cover. It looks pretty, but when you give it a harder look, I'm not really sure what it's really doing. I think it's trying to display the suburbs. You can see sort of these like townhouses down here, and then they're flipped up here. But I can't tell if this like blue color, is the water reflecting the sky or the sky itself. And there is like a pond at one point in this story, so it could be water. And the way that like this is all fading in and out, that could be air distortion or it could be water distortion. The other problem that I ran into is that I could not find the artist, and when I ran it through AI detectors, it said that with only a 65% assurance this is not AI art. I ran it through a couple, and one even said that it was 97% sure this was AI art. So, Lisa Jewell, if you're watching this, please let us know who the artist is, who made your cover. We would like to know. I'm not going to say that this is AI art, because I don't want to accuse something without really having any evidence. I cannot seem to find the person who did the art for this book, and that can be really frustrating. I also think the reason why it might think that it's AI is because of this flip up here, and that it thinks that that is an AI mistake versus, you look at this and that seems very intentional. That doesn't seem, I think an AI generator would see that as an error because it's doing something that's not supposed to be doing. And these houses look the exact same flipped, right? They don't look, they look the exact same. It looks like they just took the bottom picture and flipped it. It doesn't even look like an AI art. It would look changed. Okay, so, I don't think it's AI, but I can only say that with 65% assurance. And we won't know until somebody says, hey, I did the art on this. So if you did the art on this, please let us know. We would love to meet you. I'm on Instagram at LOHurry. You could let me know there, and I can add an amendment. An amendment. There we go. I know how to English. I got a degree. And beyond that weirdness, this cover just I'm not a cover girly. Everyone judges books by their covers. Everyone wants pretty covers. I have picked up books because I thought their covers looked pretty, and the premise, it was the covers looked pretty, the title was cool, and the premise was interesting enough. But This one is just a fairly uninteresting cover. I will say there's not a lot going on here. Solid 3. Okay, and now we're going to read the synopsis together, and we are going to be, when we're doing this section, what I'm specifically looking for is what this book is promising us, that like what this book is allegedly about, and then afterwards I'm going to be telling you if what we saw on this back cover is exactly what we saw in the book. Because it's important, especially I think if you're a writer trying to figure out how to write your synopsis, I feel like this is important just to see, you know, how exactly, like, what I'm picking up here, that it's like, these are the things that I'm expecting going into this novel, and if these things are not here, then this was a bad synopsis, okay? Like, that's why I feel like this is a helpful tool. I know that most of the people here are probably just readers, but again, this is also part review, part teaching tool for writers when they are trying to figure out what the fuck they're doing. Because God only knows, nobody is teaching us. I say that as I have a writing degree. I was taught how to write. I was not taught how to write a synopsis. Okay, so Lisa Jewell returns with a scintillating new psychological thriller about a woman who finds herself the subject of her own popular true crime podcast. Celebrating her 45th birthday at her local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summers crosses paths with an unassuming woman called Josie Fair. Josie, it turns out, is also celebrating her 45th birthday. They are, in fact, birthday twins! A few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other again, this time outside of Alex's children's school. Josie has been listening to Alex's podcast and thinks she might be an interesting subject for the series. She is, she tells Alex, on the cusp of great changes in her life. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and although Alex finds her unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep making the podcast. Slowly, she starts to realize that Josie has been hiding some very dark secrets, and before she knows, Josie has inveigled her way into Alex's life and into her home. But as quickly as she arrived, Josie disappears. Only then does Alex discover that Josie has left a terrible and terrifying legacy in her wake, and that Alex has become the subject of her own true crime podcast, with her life and her family's lives under mortal threat. So we've gotten names, concepts, and promises. So obviously we have the Alex Summers as one character, and then Josie Fair as the other character, and the fact that they are birthday twins. So, you know, how do these characters meet? We kind of get the vibe, and then we understand that they meet again, and that the promise that we're getting is that Josie, she thinks her life is interesting enough to have a podcast episode written about her, and that she's on the cusp of great changes in her life. So there's this promise that whatever is happening to Josie, she is moving into a new phase in her life, and she wants Alex to be a part of it. And then we get some insights into Josie's life without any details, that it's strange and complicated, that Alex finds it unsettling, but even that she is still continuing to make the podcast even when her life gets in mortal danger, right? So there's a sort of question getting posed, is how does a simple podcast episode go from this strange and unsettling woman to people's lives in literal danger? Like, that is a large leap. And that is what this book is promising us. It's promising us that we're going to be making that leap. So everything that this book promises on its premise is absolutely delivered on. The suburban horror is at its best. Housewives pretty much causing as much mayhem as they possibly can, to the dismay of the HOA. I could not imagine being the HOA on this street, trying to wrangle the nonsense that is Josie Fair. Could you imagine just being like, hey, it's an HOA violation, you know, if you murder someone, I'm gonna have to fee you like $200 for that. The blood will stain the sidewalk, and that is an unseemly sight in this neighborhood. Josie. The biggest thing that this premise promises us is that this basically is a chance encounter that is spiraling out of control as Josie inserts herself into Alex Summers' life, but we don't know exactly how or why. The line, "Alex has become the subject of her own true podcast," goes hard. It's a really good line. It's a really good catch to get you in. And it's promising us that this is bad, but it's gonna get a whole hell of a lot worse. And boy, does it. And it's fantastic. Because it's a novel. If this was real life, this would be the scariest thing on the planet, and I would never leave my house ever the fuck again. But it's fictional, so it's okay. Welcome to Tagtown Population Z. You've got the premise of the book under your pocket, so sit back and enjoy a rapid-fire list of how unhelpfully I've tagged this book so readers know what they're getting into. 2024 favorites. Are the Straits okay? Johnny Truancourt. CPS is on the way. Unreliable narrator. Women who acquire, use, and sometimes abuse powers in systems set up against them. Coveting my neighbor's wife. Thank you for visiting Tagtown. Be sure to check out the gift shop and the Crumbling Historical Society on your way out. I read this book in one sitting. I'm currently in the process of sort of teaching myself to fall back in love with reading again, and I'm 3 years into this process, and I'm just now re-entering the field of physical books. You know, shout out to my dad, who was in town the day that I needed to go to the library to get this book, and he drove me to the library to pick it up. You're the MVP of today's video. But in all reality, I knew that if I put this book down, I would struggle to pick it up back again because I'm really struggling with ebooks and reading physical books. So I just sat down and I did it in one go. I read it in one night. Okay, so one of my favorite tropes is the unreliable narrator. I am absolutely down for an untrustworthy, biased bitch who doesn't care to give us an objective view of the world. Only in books am I so thrilled to be gaslit. Josie is our unreliable narrator, and you don't really find out until about the midpoint or so, perhaps right away, if you're paying attention to the title. But the book really does try to make you forget about the title in the first half. There's also this key scene in the midpoint that reveals that she's a liar, but not the whole extent of her lies, which is fairly impressive. She has this dinner with Alex, and Josie's husband comes along, and Josie tells her husband a different version of events of how she felt that night versus what she tells, I think, Alex's husband. And then we see Josie's night with her own husband, Walter, after the dinner. And Josie, we see that event, Josie and her husband, Walter. And then when Josie is telling Alex about that event, Josie is telling a different story than what we saw with Josie and her husband. So at this point, we know that Josie's lying. She is the one, when referring to none of this is true, that it's referring to Josie. But again, we don't know to what extent. We just know that she's lying about how, people felt about this dinner, and then she's lying about the situation that happened between her and her husband directly after that dinner. It's a clever way of, revealing some of the truth without having to pull away the entire curtain. We don't know the extent of Josie's lies, but we do know in the fact that that bitch be lying. Josie is such a gaslighting, gatekeeping, girl-bossing monster that she makes Regina George look like a saint. We also get a dual perspective. We're switching between Josie, Queen of the Gaslight, and Alex, sweet, precious podcaster Alex. Alex's versions of events are much more accurate. She ain't got no reason to lie to us. This sets up a fairly interesting, one of us always lies and one of us always tells the truth kind of situation. The reader has to use information from Alex's side of the story to pick apart Josie's side and figure out how much is true and how much isn't. And I love that. I love that I have to sit and think about this book and figure out what the truths are and what I can prove and what I cannot prove. It is just, there's a lot of think work that goes on in this book, and it's an absolute joy and an absolute fun time. The final part, in terms of prose, that I think is cool is the framed narrative. I love framed narrative. I would sell my soul for a framed narrative. I would sell your soul for a framed narrative. Nobody's safe until all the narratives are framed. So a framed narrative is basically when you're using a device as a mode of transport for your story. A normal story is kind of like walking, and a framed narrative is like taking the bus. Same destination, different flavor of events. In the case of None of This Is True, our framed narrative is the podcast. Much like Listen for the Lie, the book utilizes a podcast to display the narrative. The benefit of this is that you can get away with really large swaths of dialogue without having to fill the space between those dialogues with scene and action, and it also doesn't feel like a dialogue dump because we're like, oh, we're listening to a podcast, so of course it's going to sound like this. That's what a podcast sounds like. Given that this story is about what is true and what is false, getting these uninterrupted versions of events without conjecture from a narrator really helps us examine the nuances of Josie's story and how fucking insane this woman actually is. There were several points in time where I was confused as to where our final destination was with the plot, but like a mindless sheep in Lisa Jewell's herd, I followed blindly and enjoyed every moment of it. The plot is, as stated in the premise, these two middle-aged women meet up, and Josie wants Alex to do a podcast episode on Josie. We learn about how Josie fell in love with her husband at an inappropriate age, married him at 18, and had kids. Alex is horrified, but doesn't want to tell Josie that she's married to someone whose favorite book is probably Lolita. And like all the while, Alex is having problems with her own husband. I think his name is Nathan. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure Nathan's like an alcoholic who's like never on time to anything and misses a lot of important meetings and dates and events with Alex. There's this big dinner planned, like this double date between Alex, Nathan, Josie, and Josie's husband Walter. It doesn't go well because Nathan doesn't show up on time after everyone leaves. Josie is back like the next day, battered and bruised, and is asking Alex for a place to stay. And Alex, precious podcaster Alex, agrees, but clearly, after a while, Josie is overstaying her welcome, even though they're, like, getting more work done and working on this podcast while Josie is sort of squatting in Alex's house. Josie's definitely overstaying her welcome, and Nate and Alex are trying to get Josie to leave. Josie doesn't like Nathan. She never has. She sees him as the kind of man that feminists would dislike because he's always out in the town with his friends drinking. I think she accuses him of infidelity. And I'm pretty sure there's a whole plotline where she tries to, like she hires someone to seduce him and it fails because he's so in love with his wife. She's enraged that he misses that dinner with her, Alex, and Walter, and is kind of, like, ragging on Alex that she is a bad feminist because she married this awful man, and the only way that she can free herself is if she divorces him. Then things begin to go sideways. Alex learns from Josie's mom that Josie's mother and Walter were dating. Walter is like 30 years older than Josie. According to the mom, Josie seduced him. This is the only part of the book that I gripe with. The mom says with conviction that Josie was not groomed by Walter, but that she seduced him. Here's the thing. Walter should know better. Children are children, and adults know better. By him enabling and accepting Josie's inappropriate behavior, that itself is shaping her into an image that he wants, and that is grooming. And all the same, I don't think this book was trying to glorify Walter. I don't think that they were trying to make us feel sorry for him. But, I don't feel bad about his ending. He was a terrible person who groomed a woman. Josie and Walter also have two daughters, Erin and Roxy. Roxy's a runaway who left at prom night after her girlfriend went missing. We'll get back to the girlfriend. All of this culminates in Josie kidnapping Nathan because she thinks Nathan is a bad husband, and then she kills him and she gets away. I think she drowns him in a lake after holding him hostage for like 3 days. And Josie promised, she sends like an email to Alex afterwards, and she said she never meant to hurt him, but she wanted to see him change and grow as a person, but he wouldn't do that. And there's no evidence to support that. You just kind of have to take Josie's word on it that she never meant to hurt Nathan. But honestly, yes, she did. She hates men. Of course. I think she wants to murder every man. Every single one of them. Look out, men. Josie's on her way to murder you. And while Josie is missing with Nathan, Josie's house is searched. Remember when I said that Josie showed up at Alex's saying she got beat by her husband and needed a place to stay? So she killed her husband. Walter's dead. Like I said, I don't feel bad that the groomer ended up dead. He kind of had it coming. But the daughter, Erin, the one who's still living with them, she was found in the closet, and it was a miracle that she survived. This is clearly a housewife with nothing to lose except for the sharpness of her kitchen knife. Because it's getting dull with how many times she is murdering people. Now, when Nate's body is found and Erin is rushed to the hospital, everything simmers down and people, they end up in the places that they need to go. Erin and Roxy end up getting an apartment together and that's all good. Like, Roxy doesn't show up until the very end of the novel. And they do an interview for this podcast. And then during all of this, we find the body of the missing girlfriend in the back of a trunk in a storage unit under Erin's name. Now, the ending, Josie tells us, she says that Roxy killed her girlfriend in a fit of rage. This allegedly tracks with Roxy. She was known for having some mental disorders that made her prone to anger and violence. And Roxy and Erin are sort of throwing their mother under the bus for this crime that they allegedly committed. Erin would be an accessory to murder after the fact for helping covering up the body. But, everyone is going to be leaving this book with different interpretations for Roxy's dead girlfriend because the only information we have about this girlfriend is the recorded testimonies of Erin and Roxy and then Josie's perspective. Nothing reliable in the slightest.
Fuck! I hate your crime scenes!
Josie at one point states she wants to come clean and Walter freaks out. She's like, I want to tell them the truth, Walter. And Walter freaks out. And we never know exactly what this is, but we can guess that it must have to do with the dead girlfriend, so Walter must also know about the dead girlfriend. And then Erin, during the interview, seems to be looking at Roxy for, for cues during the interview, but, at the same time, she was also held hostage and almost killed, so she might have also just been looking at Roxy for comfort, because she is also known for being this very timid person. And Josie just says Roxy did it. She's just like, yeah, Roxy killed that girl and I helped cover it up. And I have elected to believe that Roxy didn't do it, that Josie had done it, and that Roxy and Erin are telling the truth, because none of this is true, and everything that Josie has ever said thus far has been a lie, and I can't really believe a single word that Josie says. And perhaps that's the greatest tragedy of this book, that even if Josie is telling the truth, that she did not kill the girlfriend, no one is going to believe her because of how well she spins lies. And even the end of the book, she is on paper, word by word, rewriting the narrative so that she feels like a good mom. And honestly, here's the thing. I don't even care if Roxy and Erin did it. Josie already killed 2 people and tortured a 3rd. Roxy and Erin deserve some peace. So if Josie goes down for the girlfriend, it's no sweat off my back. This is not about justice, and I'm not going to pretend that it is. So my friend wanted me to read this book because she wanted to hear my thoughts of how feminism is portrayed in this novel. And now I know what you're thinking. Erin, shouldn't this be in the theme part of the video? And to that I would say, probably, it should be. But I'm gonna talk about it in characterization anyways, because the only consistent thing about me is that I'm inconsistent. So, Josie is a man-hating feminist. Usually I'm skeptical about these kinds of characters because a person like this is truly rare in real life. But every bad TV show attempting progressive politics has a man-hating feminist character. It's why I laugh every time conservatives are like, the left controls the media. Trust me. The only thing that controls the media is the dollar fucking bill. But where Josie works, where every other blue-haired, man-hating feminist fails, is because she is, pardon my French, absolutely psychotic. She is an unhinged psychopath using Alex's podcast as a way to project her manifesto out to the masses. This massive change that Josie says that is brought up in the premise, it's because she's about to go off the walls and murder a bunch of men that she deems bad for the world. She starts with her husband because he's a groom. She moves on to Alex's husband because he's allegedly an alcoholic, and she gets away at the end. You absolutely know that she is going to murder more men and probably other women that don't fit her idea of what a feminist is. And then she cons a podcaster to project this manifesto without them realizing it. This is Zodiac Killer levels of theatrics and performances. You know, there's even moments where Josie calls Alex a bad feminist for staying with a man like Nathan, and then Josie is so obsessed with Alex that she's like, if Alex won't save herself from this hopeless marriage, I'll save Alex. She thinks she's the fucking hero. Josie thinks she's great. And then, you know, everyone else is like, that woman needs to be put down like a dog. You know, I could talk for hours and hours about Josie. She's such an interesting little monster, and I think that's what makes this book so good. Josie so rightfully so carries this novel, and like, you feel so bad for the other people who are connected to Josie because you know that their lives are the way that they are because Josie is just bonkers. Erin is this timid gamer girl who's kind of afraid of her own shadow and almost never leaves the house. Did I get interviewed for this novel? I feel like they just wrote me. There is a line where somebody describes Erin as really, really weird and the weirdest person that they've ever met, and honestly, all Erins are like that. All Erins are the exact same. We have a hive mind, the Erin hive mind, and we are coming to your house. We are here to steal everything you own. Get ready. We're coming for you. We're all little gamer weirdos. Every Erin I've ever met is a little weirdo gamer. And you just feel so bad for her. And like, Roxy is someone who's always rebelling and resorting to violence, and she's probably like that because, geez, Josie is probably like that, and her husband is useless. Walter is useless. And even if this book paints Walter a little bit in a friendly light with his relationship with Erin, a lot of people got gripes that the groomer was not evil the whole way. And it's like, well, real groomers are not like that. Real groomers are likable. Real people who do this to children are really good, typically, are really good at getting away with it for years. Of course they're going to be likable. Of course they're going to do normal human things. And so that's why I wasn't really, like, perturbed by him being portrayed in a friendly light. That just made him all the more horrifying. Because to me, like, an actual person who acts like this are great at blending in society. They're great at making sure that their victims have no idea that they are victims in the first place. But I mean, if you're just like, no, like, that is just a hard no for me, I respect that, and you probably won't like this book, and that is fair. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just saying that's my 2 cents on it. The characterization is great. Everyone feels like fully realized characters. Everyone feels complicated. Nate is not that bad. I mean, he's a little bad, but, like, he's bad like the way that most humans are bad. Like, no person is perfect. Everyone has flaws. Some of them are glaring, and he's got a couple of glaring ones. But at the end of the day, he is a genuinely good person, and he is trying to be a better person. He's just kind of failing at it, and what I recognize in him is that he's failing a lot, but he is still kind of trying. And that, I think, is good enough. I don't care if people fail. I just care if they don't try. Like, people can fail me as many times as they want. As long as they're still trying to be a good person, that's all I really care about. Everyone is just interesting. And then, of course, Josie. My lady Josie, Queen of the Gaslight. I love that messy bitch so much. This novel is dripping in suburbia, and it portrays it very well. But the part I want to talk about here in the atmosphere in detail is Josie staying at Alex's house. This happens right after this disaster dinner with the double date that Nate doesn't show up to that pisses Josie off. And the next day she shows up at Alex's door, says her husband had harmed her, and asks for a place to stay. And then we take this, like, strange turn into almost slice-of-life Normalsville. It's kind of like that scene in Don't Worry, Darling, where Alice gets re-drugged again and is momentarily in Sunshine Happy Town for a few minutes before she reverts back to being her fully realized self. Like, we just get this immediate departure from the tension and are just like, the chill music starts playing and everyone is acting normal and you're just kind of on edge because the dinner was a disaster. And now suddenly everyone is playing nice. Josie is living with Alex. I think it totals up to 2 weeks. No, it can't be 2 weeks. It's gotta be a week. Nathan doesn't like Josie. Josie doesn't like Nathan. The kids are weirded out by Josie. And all the while, Alex and Josie are working on their podcast, and Alex is asking Josie questions about her running. She's asking about Josie's kids and things like that. And the normal questions that you would ask of a battered wife who ran from her husband, right? And there is a distinct level of vagueness that makes you wonder about the authenticity of Josie's statement. She's kind of being deliberately vague. And it was during this period that I texted my friend being like, this bitch murdered her whole ass fucking family, didn't she? It's very subtle yet effective use of horror as we slowly shift from Alex helping the battered wife Josie to Alex being trapped with psychopath Josie. It's like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. Like, at this point, Josie is only starting to feel uncanny and off, and that uncertainty blossoms into a field of doubt and horror as you and Alex realize that you've let a monster into your house. Now, how do you get her out? It's just like this skin-crawling realization, this just uncanny that everything feels so normal when it shouldn't be. It's so uncomfortable, but in the best way, because this is a thriller suspense novel, right? I'm supposed to be feeling stressed, and it's so wild that the most stressed I was is, like, in these moments. So, we've already talked about the feminist themes in this book. Josie's idea of feminism is not correct. Obviously. Especially because there's no intersectionality. This is very much white feminism. But at the end of the day, this book, I think, is about delusion. Everyone here lives in a river in Egypt. Josie is this budding serial killer with a manifesto aimed at cleansing the world of evil men and maybe even bad feminists. She's nuts, and I think this novel was cool in the way that it explored how people like this think, how it seems so logical and so reasonable to them in the decisions that they make. In Josie's perspectives, everything seems so reasonable, and it's only when you're in Alex's perspective that you're like, this is insane. This is actually insane. And this book is also like, it really does drive home how easy it is to take simple concepts like just basic feminism, non-intersectional feminism, and twist it to fit your own agenda. Like, this book is not about morally rights and moral wrongs. It's about who do you believe the most and why. And that's a reflection of the real world. Because even in the real world, a lot of people are like, I'm morally right and you're morally wrong. And that's not actually what's being asked. That's not the question. That's not the problem. The problem is not who is right and who is wrong. It's which person do you believe more than the other. Because for every person that says, I'm right, you're wrong, there's going to be someone who says the opposite. It's just all about who do you trust in this world. And I really do like the way that Josie twists and tangles basic concepts of feminism to fit her manifesto, and we are really watching the solidification of a serial killer's motives. Because Josie wasn't as, like, knee-deep into this man-hating feminism at the beginning of the novel. It develops as she is telling this stuff to Alex, and maybe that's because Josie didn't believe it at first or leaned into it in order to get Alex on her side, or maybe she did believe it the whole time and she was piecemealing it out so that Alex would not report Josie to the police. We don't know. It's sort of up for interpretation. There's so much that's up for interpretation in this novel in a really good way that I really liked. I really liked this book, and I'm really glad that my friend recommended it to me because it was such a fun read. But yeah, don't be fooled. The feminist ideas in this novel is not. Lisa Jewell is not saying this is how feminism works. It's not how feminism works. Lisa Jewell is saying this is how people can twist feminism into something that it's not. And how sometimes it can sound a little reasonable, because at the beginning of the novel, Josie sounds fairly reasonable, but at the end, of course, she is fucking up the wall mad. Okay, now that we have dissected this book to death, it's time to go over the things that I thought worked, didn't work, sort of worked, in an easily itemized list. The unreliable narrator, the framed narrative of the podcast, the dual perspective, specifically because we're given a perspective of someone we can trust and someone we can't trust, and thus we can compare the two accounts to figure exactly what is true. The tense atmosphere, especially when Josie intrudes upon Alex's home, and then Aaron, Alex, Josie, and Nathan all really worked well as characters. And then what sort of worked, Nathan's death, it functioned fine, but honestly I would have liked this novel to be longer to see Josie and Nathan together rather than it just happening off screen. Josie's mother, fundamentally cool, but her conversation on framing a teenager as a seductress felt awkward and unnecessary. Walter, because he is wrapped up in that, also feels very ambiguous in how we're supposed to feel about him. It just left a bad taste in my mouth. And then Roxy and the plotline of the dead girlfriend. This plotline really felt like it was held together by duct tape. It functions, but I feel like it needed a better polish. And then what didn't work. I rated this book 5 stars. So for me, everything at least sort of worked. And then for the most part, for people who did not like the book, a lot of people really didn't like the ending. And a lot of people were like hard no at the mom insisting that Josie seduced Walter. A lot of people got really upset about that, and that's where a lot of these low reviews are like, I didn't like this book because that made me so uncomfortable that this book became unreadable. So that's what other people didn't like about it. Again, I didn't really have anything that I didn't have anything that I hated. This is a book that I liked. So, when you're trying to improve your writing, a method of improvement is case studying books that, in broad strokes, are doing something you might want to replicate. So, here's everything that you can case study, again, in a list for your easy of reference. The framed narrative of the podcast is done very well. Josie as the unreliable narrator is done super well. It's really impressive. You could also, as sort of a cautionary tale, the pitfalls of characterizing a groomer, how that can go wrong. Again, a lot of people didn't like this. I'm one of them. And then planting or seeding information. Planting and seeding information is just like, if you need a gun to go off in Act 3, you have to put a gun in Act 1. It's the reverse of Chekhov's gun. So how much information is seeded beforehand, and then so in the last act, all of the guns going off, it doesn't feel like we're following the law of convenience. It doesn't feel like things are just happening because the plot needs it to happen. So the seeding and the planting is very good in this novel. And then the mimicry assignment. So if this was a creative writing class and you had studied this book, you would be given a mimicry assignment in which you would be mimicking the things in this book that you had studied. So for your mimicry assignment, just very basic this time around. Write a story with a framed narrative. It could be a podcast episode like this book, but you could also use emails, text threads, forum posts, an interview, a police report. What we want to examine here in studying this book, and specifically the framed narrative, is what framed narratives can do for us to help tell a story that would falter if we did not have those frames. Because framed narratives can help us give out information in unconventional ways, and the readers won't feel weirded out about it because in their head they're like, this is an email, so of course it's going to sound like this, or this is a podcast, so of course it's going to sound like this. But if without the frame, it would seem jarring and unnatural. Art is subjective, and attempting to assert any form of objectivity onto it is a waste of time. You can't even say that good grammar is an objective must-have because there are genres where fragmentation is important and there's an audience for those genres. I think everyone wants high-quality novels. We just have drastically different thresholds as to what constitutes a high or low-quality novel. So whether you loved this book so much that it's a hill you're willing to die on, or hated it with the passion of 1,000 suns, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your interpretation. That's it from us. The madness has ended. You can go in peace, and we will see you next time when we delve back in with our next book.